But what I would ask you is how do we balance a deeply disturbing situation in which there are unequal miscarriage rates that are produced by an inequality within market economics versus the kind of take a step back macro picture that miscarriage rates for everyone across the society are dramatically lower than they were a century ago because, one could argue, of the technological and economic progress fostered by capitalist economics. I mean, that seems to me a tricky and tough question to wrestle with.
Is that both of the questions?
No, I can give you the other one too. Sure. So my other question is, you said that the invisible hand idea in capitalism is just a theory, right? And that it's not a real physical thing, and because it's a theory, we could theorize otherwise. We're not bound by it. But what if it's not so much just a theory? What if it's a force like gravity? That is, it's something that's there, whether we acknowledge it or not. And if we choose to fight against it, it's incredibly inefficient and we're going to continually be frustrated. Whereas if we accept it and work with it, it can exponentially power what we're trying to do.
Those are both really interesting questions, actually, and also things that could be sort of book-length discussions.
Yeah, I told you I was going to keep throwing these things out there.
Well, I think I'll start with the second one first. And my immediate answer to that one, my first thought was that we fight against gravity all the time, constantly. We have chosen to do that just by walking around. That's like a thing that we do. And by like going into space. There are many things that sort of seem natural in our environments that we are able to work with and work around and change because we are human and we have the power of creativity and ingenuity and innovation. We tend not to necessarily let the world, even like strong forces within the world, push us around. We can make choices that change how those forces affect us. And I think with economics and its actual divorce from sort of moral theology and more political concerns, one of the failures I see in the way that we think about this is that we just assume that they're forces. Well, you know, the market says this, and, well, it's the market, so you can't really do anything about that. Sorry, everyone. When, in fact, we can. To what extent we want to is the real question. How much are we willing to push against or work with the invisible hand? What do we want from it enough to intervene? And then for your first question, I think that's a similar question to what you were asking Michael, actually. You know, whether helping everyone in a sort of abstract sense is better or more important than, you know, helping individuals. And again, I think that's sort of a prudential question, actually, because they're not mutually exclusive, right? You can make the world wealthier. You can, you know, increase healthcare or health outcomes for everybody, while also making sure or thinking about how to lower the incidence of bad outcomes for, you know, individual groups. Like, those are things that we can do at the same time. And I think one of our major failings in the way that we think about our economy and the goals that we can reach is that we think that we can't. We're capable of a lot more within our economy, within our minds, within the way that we prosper than we allow ourselves to be.
We can have some of our cake and eat some of it. We don't have to either keep it or
I love
give it
cake.
the whole
Yes.
thing. Yes.
So I'm going to seem like I might be attacking Christine, which I'm not foolish enough to do. But so you talked about fighting against the market, and I was thinking about your blue law examples. You want to know somebody who fights against the market? Is the guy who owns Chick-fil-A, right? He shuts down on Sunday. And that is a fight against the market, because I guarantee you he could sell a lot of chicken sandwiches if he was open on Sunday, and he'd make a lot more money if he did. But so we're not victims of the market. The question is, how are we as individuals going to participate in that? Are we going to are we going to do that? And I would just also, just on the subject of blue laws, I don't want to give an economics lecture here. The history of blue laws is mostly the history of protectionist rules that protect retailers. Car dealers don't want to have to be open on Sunday because they don't want to have to pay the sales force. So they all get together and pass a law that says nobody can be open on Sunday. Has nothing to do with the commitment to the Sabbath and a day of rest. It's everything to do with basic sort of rent seeking on the part of government.
So, that makes me sad, but apparently I'm. But then again, I mean, your Chick-fil-A example says that that is not the case in some instances. And to Chick-fil-A, I think that is actually a good example of judging what we value, which is something that every human, every state, every person has to do. Does the owner of Chick-fil-A value having a much more efficient workforce and working on Sundays so that he and his shareholders can make more money? Or does he value more allowing his workers and people in the community to, yes, spend time with their families and go to church? That's a choice that you have to make. That's the choice that we all make.
The Roman Catholic Catechism is on your side. As the Protestant, let me quote the Roman Catholic Catechism. The Sabbath is a protest against the servitude of work. I love that. I love that. And you think how that conflicts with 24/7. It's just a very different way of looking at the world.